Hello. So this first part of the week, we are going to be looking at transformations. So first, let's just go back over what we did last week. So I've given you a graph of the quadratic here. And as far as domain and range, like I said last week, the domain for a quadratic, because it's got arrows on both sides, is always going to be, sorry, my brain, all real numbers. The range, everything is above the vertex. So I'm going to say y is greater than or equal to -1. Okay, as far as intercepts go, it's where it touches each axis. So I've got x-intercepts at the points 1, 0, and 3, 0. And then my y-intercept is up here at 0, 3. The vertex is the middle point. So it's the point 2, -1, and in this case, it is a minimum because it's at the bottom of the graph, and the axis of symmetry, which cuts the parabola in half, is the line x equals 2. So as far as function notation, find f of 4. So they've given me x. If you remember, that when it's a number in parentheses, it is the x. So if I go where x is 4, I can see that y is 3. And then here they say if f of x equals -1, then what does x equal? So the fact that they're asking you for x should be a pretty good giveaway that they've given you y. So when y is -1, in this case, x is 2. So that's just a refresher of stuff we should already know. All right, so as far as transformations, this is definitely something that you'll want to write down to have as a reference somewhere. So you should have seen in the activity, if you did it on Desmos, that A can affect the graph in one of two ways. First, you want to look at if A is positive or negative. So if it's positive, that means that the graph is going to open up, okay, like it's going to go up. If it's negative, then we know that it has been reflected and it's going to go down. The other way is if A is, well, let me do a different color. If A is between 0 and 1, okay, so basically that means if it's a fraction, obviously the fraction would have to be less than 1, but if you have a number that's between 0 and 1, then it's what is called a compression. It's where it's like the graph like got squeezed down and it becomes wider. So when I ask for transformations, you can say compression or you can say wider. Each is fine. If you have it so that the absolute value of A is greater than 1, basically meaning like it doesn't matter if it's like -5 or +5. If the number by itself is bigger than 1, then it's called a stretch, because it's like it took it and they stretched it, and stretching it makes it narrower. Okay, so you could say stretch or more narrow. Either would be fine. H and K are much simpler. Okay. So for H, you either have x minus h, and if you have that, that means that it was moved right, or you have x plus h, where it's moved left. So the tricky part about h is that it does what's kind of opposite of normal. The minus goes right and the plus goes left, because if pretty much whenever you have something in parentheses with x in an equation, it does the opposite. You always have to flip the sign to kind of make sense of it. As far as k, if you have plus k, it's going to go up, and if you have minus k, it's going to go down. So with transformations, this is vertex form. So the vertex is actually hk. So the nice thing about this is it's pretty easy to graph without any sort of calculator or technology, because you can pull the vertex straight out of the equation, and based on A, you know if it goes up or down. So just a couple examples. I'm gonna save the transformations to last, just because sometimes it's easier for people to see if you've graphed it first. So the vertex, I'm gonna use these two numbers, but the tricky part is I have to flip the first number. So it's gonna be +4, +3. Remember, anything inside parentheses with x is gonna flip. So I'm gonna go to the point +4, +3, put a dot, and then my a is a -2, so that's gonna affect the shape. So that means since it's negative, it's gonna go down, and since it's a 2, it's gonna be more narrow. If you want to use GeoGebra or a graphing calculator to graph these, totally feel free while you're getting used to this stuff. But you should know that from looking at the equation that the graph will be going down. So now that we have a graph, let's go ahead and name the transformations. So first, starting with A, we know that it's reflected, and there's a stretch, or it has become narrower. We also know that the vertex started here, so if you just look at the graph, you should see it went right 4 and up 3. So that's how this graph has been changed from the parent function of y equals x squared. So since the vertex is at the top, we know it's a maximum. The axis of symmetry cuts it in half, so it's the line x equals 4. Domain is always all real numbers because there's arrows on both sides, and everything is below the vertex. So I'm going to say y is less than or equal to 3. Okay, so I've got one more. All right. So the first thing is the vertex. So I'm going to, remember, you have to flip the sign in parentheses with x. That's going to be a big thing that comes up all the time. So for my vertex, I have to flip that to be -4, and the other one stays as just -2. So if I go to -4, -2, I put a dot there. And then, like I said, you can use GeoGebra or whatever to look at the graph if you're still kind of unsure. But since we've got a 1/2 in front, that means that it's gonna be wider. Oops. So it's gonna be like a wider view. So that is called a compression, where it's made wider. And I know that since my vertex started at 0, it went down 2 and left 4, or left 4 down 2. All of that information can be pulled from either the equation or the graph, whichever you're more comfortable with. Since the vertex is at the bottom, it is a minimum. It's down here. The axis of symmetry cuts the parabola in half through the vertex, so it's the line x equals -4. The domain, as always, is all real numbers, since I have arrows on both sides. And since everything is above the vertex, my range is going to be that y is greater than or equal to -2. So remember that the vertex tells me the axis of symmetry and the boundary for the range. Just a little helpful hint. So that's what we're doing this week, or the beginning of this week. I will see you guys at the live meet. And that's it.